Hello, my name is Jason C. I'm a third-year music composition and education double major, and I, alongside fellow composer Roberto Casillas, composed the music for the theater, film, and digital production miniseries, The Resistance. This presentation will explore the process of creating the soundtrack for the miniseries, specifically looking at the basic stages that were taken to create the soundtrack, the strengths and limitations that came with working as co-composers, and how the music impacts these episodes. Let's take a look at the music of The Resistance. First off though, a little bit of background on the miniseries itself. The Resistance is a 4-episode miniseries created under the supervision of theater, film, and digital production professor Patricia Cardosa, and follows a group of soldiers from the Resistance as they try to find an advantage to defeat the sinister Rain organization. The miniseries premiered online at the Theater, Film, and Digital Production 2020 FilmWorks Festival and won several awards, including the FilmWorks Original Score Award. The process of creating the music for the miniseries began with understanding the mood of the entire series. After Roberto and I received the scripts, we analyzed them separately and came up with our own interpretations of the film's tone. Following our script analysis stage, there were meetings with the writers and directors of the episodes to gain a firmer understanding on the overall vision of the miniseries. From these discussions, the decision was made to compose the music focusing on 2 central leitmotifs, one for the Resistance and one for the Rain. A leitmotif is a motive, or a short melodic fragment, that is associated with a character, a place, or an idea. Take the music of iconic composer John Williams, whose use of the leitmotif inspired how they would be used in The Resistance, in films such as Star Wars, in works like Imperial March, or Darth Vader's theme, or the film Jaws, which uses 2 notes to signify danger. The next step was to begin creating sketches of the music. Roberto focused on the motive for the Rain, while I focused on creating a motive for the Resistance. Not much else could be composed at around this point, as the final cut of the episodes is needed to fully sync the music with the visuals and the audio. When sketching and beginning to compose the music for the miniseries, Roberto and I began drawing influence from other works. We both wanted to explore ideas of the pain that can be caused by war, albeit in different ways. While I can't speak on all of Roberto's influences, Roberto did discuss being influenced by the composer Hans Zimmer, specifically his work in the Dark Knight trilogy, and notably the piece The Joker's Theme, which explored elements such as violence, brutality, and chaos. I was influenced by the music of the series Silent Hill, specifically the piece Alessa's Harmony. This piece influenced the more emotional character moments of the series, exploring ideas of loss and trauma. The ideas and mood of these pieces were reapplied to fit the message and tone of The Resistance. After the production wrapped and the final cuts were completed, composition could truly begin. The first major step was to create the backdrop for specific scenes to enhance the atmosphere. This was done most often in emotional or action-filled scenes to add more weight. Strings and percussion were most often employed to create the backdrop, often much quieter than the dialogue to add depth without overshadowing the story. The next main step was using motives and reapplying them to different contexts. For example, the Resistance theme, originally written for piano, appears in various forms. When it's first introduced in the miniseries, it's heard in brass instruments. Sometimes the motive is heard in aggressive strings, and sometimes the motive isn't played in its entirety. The Rain theme usually appears in strings and brass, but changes in terms of how prominently it appears. For example, at the beginning of the first episode, the theme is quite prominent. But here, in the 3rd episode, the motive is much more subtle.
When we make the weapons, what happens next? More lives are lost? Then what? If
We don't have time for this. Check the hall, meet me on the other side.
Working with a co-composer for The Resistance was a unique experience. especially since Roberto and I were both used to composing alone. This process came with its own strengths and limitations. One major challenge was that we were both used to composing on different production software. Roberto was used to using a program called Ableton, while I was used to using a program known as Fruity Loop Studio. Because we also had different composition styles, we often would bounce ideas off of one another for hours without coming to any form of consensus. However, eventually the different compositional styles turned into a strength, as we both focused on different aspects of the composition, with Roberto focusing first on harmony and chords and large action-oriented scenes, whereas I tended to focus more on melody and focus more on character-driven scenes. This allowed us to work off of our own strengths and divvy up the workload. The music served to impact the miniseries in several ways. As stated earlier, the backdrop is necessary to enhance the atmosphere of the films, creating additional emotional weight and tension to each scene. The absence of music was also effective in creating tension, as the familiarity of having a musical backdrop disappeared. The motive served as a consistent musical element throughout the entire series, tying the film together not just through visuals and story, but also through music. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and thank you to the writers, directors, and Professor Patricia Cardosa for the experience to score this film.